I'll try it again.
Hey fam!
This is Planet Insight, and we're here to talk about health today. We're going to just do an open discussion in regards to health and our friendship and, future plans and endeavors. So, basically, I'll just start off by saying I have sickle cell anemia and I am a type 1 diabetic. I was diagnosed with sickle cell anemia before the age of 1. And what that is a blood disorder where your cells are shaped as in a crescent moon or a sickle shape instead of being rounded like normal cells. And it gets hard for those cells because of their shape and stickiness to pass through joints. And so those times when the cells clog up in the joints, those are called crisis. And what a crisis is excruciating pain. A crisis causes excruciating pain, debilitating to the point where you have to go to the hospital and receive drugs. There is no cure at the present moment, and there's not really any treatment. They use hydroxyurea, which was a medication that was discovered through trial and error from cancer. And so they use that for sickle cell patients as well. And that's just to lengthen the time between crises to help you go a longer period of time without having the pain crisis and having to be hospitalized. Some sickle cell patients have blood transfusions regularly and things of that nature. I'm also type 1 diabetic. I was diagnosed with that in 2005, and I believe they told me that it was a result of like a complication of sickle cell anemia. So that's what I battle with on a day-to-day basis. And then I met my friend. And let's just discuss how you felt when I introduced, my sicknesses to you.
Whew. Well, first of all, you don't look like what you've been through.
That's a blessing.
Honestly, when I first met you, I had no idea that you had anything that you were having to deal with day to day. Which was so inspiring to me once we finally had that talk, which I later discovered you intentionally do that.
I do.
You don't tell people that you have either of the illnesses because you don't want to be, is it labeled or?
Yeah, several reasons. One of the main reasons, I just want to be looked at normally, like a regular person. And so I've always tried to hide it initially so that people would view me as a regular person. And then when they found out what I was dealing with, they wouldn't, treat me so differently.
Right.
Because of, my conditions.
Right. And so initially for me, it was just mind-blowing. Once you explained how the impact of sickle cell anemia was on your life, I mean, from childhood into adulthood, right? Because I think starting early out, you were hospitalized all the time. And so for me, it was just mind-boggling and really eye-opening because I have not had that experience, and initially it wasn't a thought. So I think sometimes it's not even that you're not grateful about things. You just don't even know that things can be different.
Right.
And I think for me, that was initially what really made me grateful but curious at the same time, because I was like, wow, like this is your everyday experience where this is something that may be a random occurrence in my life. The most I visited people in the hospital was for like a short stint. Even if we did go, it was, they got ill suddenly or they were sick and they needed, to get surgery or something like that. And they were in 2 to 3 days, but you're talking about weeks and months on end from a child to like adulthood. And then also with it being so random, like you can't prepare for it. and I'm naturally an inquisitive person and a researcher, and
Right.
it's just kind of just always been a part of me. So after you told me about it, you know, I wanted to know more. One, because I'm also a person that likes to embrace people that others may view like different or something. And I've never, I guess because I've always kind of been the black sheep or the loner, I've never wanted anyone else to feel like they were on the outside. So I think that was initially kind of why it was so important for me, for you to feel, you know, supported, or, you know, at least I tried to communicate that.
You did. You were
you know, and I can't imagine like dealing with something day to day like that. You know, it was, which for me was also inspiring because, you know, I get a headache, or, you know, as a woman, what we deal with, you know, every month, it's like, man, like, I can't wait for that to pass, or, you know, I'm trying to figure out what can I take, you know, to alleviate this pain or whatever. And, you know, just to know that you were dealing with something day in and out that was just like so heavy, but you rose above it. I think that was what was more inspiring to me, not seeing you in a space where you were just like, I'm gonna let this defeat me. You were always really active, which I think for most people that see you, they would be so floored that you had to balance all this stuff, because it's like, what? Like, I just saw you, like, you know, I mean, everybody probably doesn't know, but you're a musician, so, you know, and you're really active, and you try to do your best with everything. You never want to be pitied, or, you know, which I learned early on too, you know, you like your independence, which is great. I think, you know, that's awesome. But I also feel like as people, we have to support each other, you know, and that was something new to me, realizing like, wow, there's a lot more than what you see to a person. And then with like type 1 diabetes also, it's like, man, you have this excruciating thing that you're dealing with pain over there, and then there's pain associated with type 1 diabetes, with neuropathy, that I later learned, and then also just with the having to monitor your glucose levels,
blood sugar,
every day, and testing your blood. I mean, like, I do not like needles, can't handle them, just like, if I have to get a shot, like, I'm bracing myself, I'm talking myself up the whole time, you know, preparing myself, and you stick yourself all day.
When I was younger, because, you know, the sickle cell caused me to be in and out the hospital, the doctor visits and stuff like that a lot. So every time I went to the doctor, they wanted to test my blood. They always wanted to take blood. When I was in the hospital, of course, they had to give me IVs. I cried every single time they said, before they even gave me the shot. They was like, we got to take some blood. I was crying, like real tears. Because I was so scared of needles. And then come to find out, I would have to be giving myself shots. Like, that is so crazy.
And you do it like, it's a regular thing.
Yeah, now it's just like, whatever.
It's like a part of everyday life, you know? So it's for like, me, it was like...
Take this shot or you die. So, you know.
And I was like, you do what? And then learning how much there's misinformation and misconceptions about, you know, both of the things that you deal with, which made it even more difficult, because with type 1 diabetes, there is a whole different spectrum of diabetes out there that's completely separate from type 2 diabetes. And as a person who was unfamiliar and unaware, in all honesty, about diabetes, I was totally confused. I grouped the two together. I just thought maybe one meant it was further along than the other. Like, you know, like 1 and 2, we're in a race here. I don't know. You get a medal, you get a medal, you get a medal. But I was just ill-informed. And once you explained to me that it's an autoimmune disease and you can't control it, like, you can't lose weight or change your diet or, you know, take any kind of medication,
which is something that could
reverse it, which is something that you can do for type 2 diabetes. So it's like, man,
they really should have 2 totally different names,
right? Because it's a real easy misconception, I think.
And they group them together, and a lot of people address type 2 diabetes, but they just say diabetes in general,
right?
And it's not covered under the type 2 umbrella.
Yeah, and they also put a lot of emphasis on self-care with type 2 diabetes. Right. And unfortunately, type 1s get grouped in with that. And that's kind of unfortunate and unfair, really, because it's nothing that you can do physically, you know, to change that. And it's your body literally like attacking itself, and it's not something that you could, if I eat better, you know, or if I'm, you know, more disciplined, then this condition can change.
Right. Type 1 diabetes, just for the record, is insulin dependent, meaning you have to take insulin in order to survive. Type 2 diabetes can take medication, and if it gets out of control, then they have to take insulin. But with control, then they can go back to just the medication. And sometimes a lot of type 2 diabetes, a lot of type 2 diabetics have been able to reverse their disease.
Right.
So.
Right. Which I'm still holding out hope for type 1. I'm the optimist. I'm like, it can be done.
Right. Somehow.
Which I think further kind of illuminates how we grew in friendship.
Right.
Because I'm just kind of that person that's unwilling to accept what's presented.
Unwilling.
I don't know if it's just my Taurus nature that's just like bullheaded.
And we're both Tauruses, so we're both bullheaded.
Yeah. I'm just unwilling to accept that it can't be different. And I think that's a part of my personality, but also part of my faith. And I just feel like the more exposure you get, the more wisdom you get, like, I think things can be different. And I will take gradual, small steps and celebrate those victories just as much as big overhauls. And there's been a lot of progressive research.
I'm a big overhaul.
Right? You're like, all or nothing.
Change it all!
But I think there's been great strides. I think on both sides of alternative medicine and, you know, scientific medical field research. I think both are trying to solve issues. I think they look at them in different ways. I think the beauty of it would be if they were to merge, which I'm seeing more doctors embracing some of the other side, which is, for me, encouraging, at least with the plant-based diet. Because, I mean, even specifically on your last visit to the hospital, you know, when they left, the discharge papers or whatever encouraged you to actually use a plant-based diet.
And that was the very first time that I've seen a hospital actually recommend a plant-based diet, which is awesome. Just lets you know that times are changing and people are recognizing.
And this is a mainstream hospital, you know. So I think that's a huge win.
Yeah, you know, since I've incorporated my plant-based diet, I've noticed drastic changes, like in hospitalization and recovery time as far as sickle cell crisis. I was thinking back up to my last major crisis, which was January 2017, and I went vegan or plant-based April 2017. So in January, I had a full week in the hospital. When I left the hospital, I was still in pain, and it took an entire full week for me to recover after the hospital released me. So there's a week in the hospital on heavy opioid medication, drugs, and things trying to control the pain. And then the week after, they gave me prescriptions to take home to still take that medication and try to control the pain. Now, for the entire 2 weeks, I was in pain. The first week, of course, was more severe, and then the second week was very minimal, you know, but it was full 2 weeks on of pain. And so after incorporating a plant-based diet, I've noticed that going to the hospital now, and I actually had 2 visits lately within the last few months, I only stayed for 2 days. Basically, the day I checked in, I stayed that day and that night. And then the next day, I was released on both occasions. And this is absolute record time. Like, I've never, ever been admitted into the hospital. And every time I go for a sickle cell crisis, I am admitted every single time. If I let the pain get to the point where I can't bear it anymore and I have to go to the hospital, they are going to admit me to the hospital, and that visit is going to last a week. But ever since I've been plant-based, my visits have been shorter, and I've only had 2 since I've been plant-based, and both of those lasted for a maximum of 2 days. And for both occasions, I fasted. When I went to the hospital, like, I refused food, and if I did eat the very first time, I ate fruit only. And fruit is a cleanser, and so by me only eating fruit, it helped to get toxins and stuff out of my body, which helped me to recover faster. This time I went full on, no food, no drink, nothing. Well, I had water, but no food and anything else besides water. Excuse me. And so I fasted for 3 full days, and my recovery was immaculate. When I got out of the hospital, they gave me prescription medicine to come home, and take that to maintain and to, help me with the pain. I took 0 pills.
Yeah.
0. And previously, though,
you had to, right?
Yeah, I had to. Before I went plant-based, I had to take medication to function daily.
Yep.
Like, at least every other day I was taking pain medication just to be able to get out of the bed, to go to work, to do what I needed to do, my extracurricular activities, because I still wasn't stopping. Like, I still wanted to, have fun and and do musician stuff and workshops and gigs and playing around and stuff like that. But I needed medication in order to just function, because I even had an ailment where, my foot was bothering me and it would hurt every single day.
Yep.
Every single day. And this was like at least a year or so, that it would hurt. And I would have to take pain medication just to make it, just to walk, and things like that. I tried all kind of remedies and things to try to resolve that issue. I went to doctor after doctor. I went to specialist after specialist. I spent so much money, so much time, so much effort. I've taken so much medication trying to rid the pain and to just make it, day to day. And within a couple of months of being plant-based, everything seemed to come into submission. Like, my pain was under control. I didn't have to take the medication on a regular basis like I was taking. Those ailments, like my foot was hurting. I even had back pain. Like, my back would lock up after 15 minutes of walking. That went away. My foot pain went away. And all of these things I went to specialists and doctors for and got medication for, and none of those things resolved it at all. But when I went plant-based, within 2 months, everything was resolved. Now, I still have sickle cell anemia, and I am still a type 1 diabetic, but the diet is helping me to control, my pain and my blood glucose readings, because those were off the charts.
You were hospitalized for that too?
Every day, yeah. Ketoacidosis, I had that a couple of times and had to be hospitalized for that. That's a much faster recovery time, but just the fact that you have to be hospitalized costs money. And I'm not rich, so that adds up, and every single time you have to go, that's just more and more money that you're spending. And people always talk about how expensive a plant-based diet is. I come to let you know that the hospital bills are way more expensive than some fruits and vegetables. Like, let's just be real. Like they said, you can pay the farmer now or pay big pharma later. They mean like the pharmacy industry. If you don't pay for these organic fruits and vegetables and eat those now to get your body right, sooner or later those diseases that are diet related are going to manifest. They may not look like, you may not look sick. You may not look like anything is wrong with you. Or, you may be living your best life, eating what you want to eat, and then all of a sudden, your health fails and things start to snowball. And so it's like you should try to take care of yourself before it gets to that level.
Right.
Because if you're trying to reverse something, it's harder to reverse it than to just prevent it in the first place.
True.
And then what good is wealth without health?
Yep.
They say health is the new wealth, right?
Yeah.
Like, you need that. There are people on their sick beds that are in the hospital and things like that. They're not worried about, how they're going to spend their money. They can't spend it.
Mm-hmm.
The only way they're going to spend it is on the doctor bills and the hospital bills,
Mm-hmm.
So it's important, that you try, if you don't have any ailments, to at least try to take care of your health. Because just speaking from someone who I didn't have a chance to be precautious,
Right. Yeah.
Mine was all hindsight. Like, when I was here at 1 year old, I already had, sickle cell anemia, and then later on developed type 1 diabetes. So it wasn't that I had to prevent it. It was that I didn't recognize, and no one ever told me, how food related to those illnesses. Now, they describe triggers for me, like overexhaustion, extreme temperatures, things like that.
Altitude.
Right, altitude, thank you. That's the one I was trying to think of earlier. Those things.
Research queen.
She is a research queen. Those things are the triggers that, start up sickle cell crisis, or, can put you in that condition. But never did they mention food. So I had no idea that food affected, my disease.
Mm-hmm.
And so finding that out just really, changed my perspective. It changed how I eat. It changed, my way of life. And it also improved my quality of life.
Yes, it did. Yes, it did.
So I may still have those, ailments, but my quality of life has improved.
Right. And I think the big missing, or one of the key takeaways from this, I think it's important to highlight that it's hard to accept that simple truth of changing your diet affecting everything else.
Right.
Because, I don't want to make that seem like, oh, there was an aha and all of a sudden everything just changed and shifted, and then there was plant-based everything.
Right.
Because initially it was laughable.
Mm-hmm.
You were like, are you serious? I've been dealing with this. This is how it's going to be. And it is what it is.
Because that's what I was always told.
Right.
Doctors,
right.
Professionals, people that went to school, for degrees and things like that in the medical field, always told me that this is how it's going to be.
This is your plight. And I think that's the importance of advocacy.
Right.
And knowing that you have to fight for your health. You have to get knowledge and wisdom. That's why we always emphasize that. Because you are your own best, advocate.
Mm-hmm.
Because you know how you feel.
Right.
You know what your pain is like. Only you can describe what it is you deal with day to day. Only you can detail, what you're sensitive to, or what you've had a reaction of, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
They can keep charts on you, but you know it, from the start.
Yeah.
And you can document it, and you can pay attention. And you have to be, dialed in. You have to value yourself and your body enough to do the hard work, like Oprah says. Do your work, like Iyanla says. I think that is critically important, because I didn't realize that. I thought you go to the doctor, they tell you what's wrong, you take the medication, and your situation or issue is eradicated. Right. And there are some things that even science can't help you. Sorry, boo.
Right.
But what I'm realizing is, while there are facts, there is data, there is research, you also have to do just as much yourself. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, when you're ill, you're not in a place where you can do that. And I think that's why it's important to have people around you that can support you and help you in that effort. And I think that's what I realized my role was. And even in kind of educating people now and having the conversations that I'm having now with people that I work with family members, people in the community, or people that I meet, or what have you, you know, that bring these issues, because a lot of people have health ailments, and they're at different stages and different degrees, but this is a common thing that people are dealing with, and it's something that you have to deal with all the time. It's important to be invested in your health. Like, you look at all of the drama on social media, you might as well look into what the doctor says, you know. Even with just in my family, like, we would always encourage second opinions, but now I'm saying get a second opinion, but also do some research for yourself. You know, figure out, like, has anybody seen success in this area? Has anybody, you know, had any different reactions, or any new information, or any new documentation about any improvements in this area? Because that's what it was initially for me, because I think it was through church, we both did a fast, and you initially recognized you felt different. It wasn't immediate in regards to your illnesses, but as a whole, energy-wise, you just were like, I'm kind of like okay with this a little bit. Like, it's a change, it's different, but I'm kind of liking at least how I'm feeling.
Right.
And by the same token, I realized that I felt better, but also that I had a sugar problem. And sometimes you don't know, like they say, you don't know, like, what you're missing until it's gone, or you don't miss your well until your water runs dry. That's kind of how it was for me with sugar, because I didn't realize, I kind of, like, have it, you know, I want sugar, I want candy, until I was in a situation where I was no longer eating that for a time period. And then I was like, oh snap, you know, this is potentially an issue. And I think that most people would recognize that if they were to go, like, on a whole foods, fruits and vegetable based diet, they would realize, like, how much nutrients they were missing out on, how their system would be different, how they would feel different energy wise, how they would feel emotionally, mentally, spiritually, everything. It impacts everything. And when you go back and look, I'm more of a naturalist in general. Like, I love the beauty of nature. I don't necessarily like the bugs or animals that are wild, but I love the way that things are designed and how they work. And when you just think about it, like, it naturally clicked to me as we begin to look more and research things, like, okay, fruit responds differently in my body than, like, Slim Jims and potato chips, you know what I'm saying? And I feel different. Like, I feel like I'm actually being fed when I'm eating these things, versus, like, I just, like, got some hot Cheetos. Like, it was cool, like, it tasted good, but I don't have that same fulfillment or, like, energy, or, you know.
When I was eating junk food, I was literally a bottomless pit. It's like I could never get full because I was never supplying my body with the nutrients that it desired and needed to function optimally.
Right. And I was also of the impression, like, when you ate, you were supposed to be tired afterwards. I thought that I thought that was normal. Yeah. Because it was normal for me. And so, after, like, working and not eating that way any longer, I was like, oh, I'm not tired after lunch.
Right.
Like, this is different. This is a switch, you know? And I would notice other people in the office that were kind of more intentional about what they put in their bodies and how they ate and stuff. Like, and people who were leaders, people who were in, like, high positions, managers and so on and so forth. Like, I noticed that they were intentional about what they ate, what they drank. Like, most of them would, like, bring their lunch. It would be something that was prepared at home. Even if it wasn't plant-based, it was prepared at home. Right. They brought their own, like, drinks and stuff, and then they would actually work out during their lunch hour and eat at their desk. And I was like, well, that's weird, you know. I'm just being honest. I was like, that's like, okay. Like, but when you think about it, like, they all had families and stuff, and some of them don't, you know, some of them are single and stuff, but, like, I think when you have that kind of investment in your life, you have goals, you have ambition, you want to achieve certain things, like, you have to be intentional about your health, because if you're not well, how will you do the things that you aspire to do?
Right.
How will you have the energy to maintain the company, to lead people, to like support people? How can you be there for them if you physically and mentally can't be there? You know? And then also I started to notice now there's a shift and a trend shift in even corporations, their healthcare packages. They encourage people to be more invested in their health. Like they will give you discounted gym memberships, and they will give you health coaches and all kind of different resources to like alleviate their cost and yours, because you know it costs the company more if you're having to do more visits and medications and things of that nature. And then if you're calling off, like you're not able to be there, so they want people to be more invested in what, their bodies are doing and everything. And I think that was what was so impressive to me, like actually seeing things work. I think that was the really cool part. After doing the fast and realizing, man, this is a thing, and then looking more into it and realizing like there's more than what we initially, thought or knew, because there was stages to it, right? It wasn't like, oh, now you're just like completely plant-based, because initially you did do a lot of like there were different stages of transition that have helped you to maintain and even to attempt some of the things that you've done, because you did an all alkaline fast for a stint, and at one point in your life that was like ludicrous.
Right. Initially when I saw the alkaline list, I thought I could never do that.
Right.
That was something that was impossible for me to do. But fast forward a couple of years down the line, and I was able to do it. And I'm still incorporating a lot of the alkaline foods in my day-to-day diet. I would say I'm like 80-20 as far as alkaline. And so I'm happy that I've been able to transition. But it is about transitions. Like sometimes you can flip the switch to one thing and never look back. And it's no problem. Like, when we decided to go, when I decided, we didn't go vegan at the same time.
Right.
When I decided to go vegan or plant-based, I was able to say, okay, you know what? From this point on, I'm not having meat anymore. But there are stages to get up to that, led up to that point.
Right.
Just switching, just trying to become health conscious.
Right.
Leading up to that point. And then when I just got to the point where I was fed up with the difference in feeling, and the difference of feelings when I got fed up with the way that I was feeling when I was eating a plant-based diet versus my cheat days when I would eat, animal products or whatever.
Right.
I got fed up with that, and I just said, okay, this is the day that I go full plant-based,
Right.
And it's really up to you when you decide to make that transition.
Yeah.
People can, this is why I don't like, people who just talk down and are very negative about, your transition and their vegan agendas and things like that. It's because, like, people can convince you, they can influence you.
Right.
People could influence you, but you have to come to your own decision or it won't stick.
Absolutely.
Because if you don't make this decision internally and, take a stand on how you want to control your life or the changes you want to make, the changes won't stick.
Absolutely. I mean, I had to identify with it myself. I'm a person that is very, specific with my own decision making. I don't cave to peer pressure. Like, if I do something, I wanted to do it. Even if my friend asked or if there was a group of people doing it, bottom line, if I do it, it's because I want to. Like, I will never just be like, oh, well, everybody's doing it, so I'm going to do it. No, like, I wanted to do it deep down. Even if it was, like, crazy radical.
Right.
It's like, okay. And so I was like, that's cute for you. I'm not convinced yet that that's something that I want to do.
And I wasn't trying to convince
her. Right. Exactly. And I think that's what I've always appreciated about our friendship. Like, we are two different people and we do different things and we come to different conclusions at our own time. And I think that's the beauty of it. Like, even if we don't agree with something, we'll agree to disagree. Or, like, we may have a revelation later and be like, you know what? You were right about that.
Right.
I'm going to eat crow. I was wrong.
Not gonna eat crow.
It is what it is, you know. But at the end of the day, I knew, especially for something this critical or this impactful of a life change, it was something that I had to specifically identify with. Right. And I knew I'm not going to stick to something unless I've concluded it's the best thing for me to do, regardless. Even if it's good for me. I have to know within myself, this is what I want to do. And this is what I'm going to do in this situation. Because, I mean, even as a person, like, there have been many things that I'm like, I don't want that, and I'm kind of going against the grain, you know, and I'm okay with that. At first, I was a little insecure about it, but now I'm more, I don't know if it's like I'm getting older, so I'm like caring less. Like, you get one life type thing, right, where it's like, YOLO. Before you want to impress everyone and please everyone and all that kind of deal, but I've never been the person that's like, I gotta be popular, I gotta be on it, I gotta be popping. But I was always of the mindset that, like, I'm gonna do my own thing regardless. Like, stand with me or don't. And that's who I knew, like, we're real friends. Like, even if you don't agree, like, you support my decision. And fortunately, all of my friends, and even my family, there were some of them that had a little something to say, but, you know, we cool now.
They gonna throw slick comments in.
Yeah, but it's okay, because that's, for me, I'm okay with that. Like, I'm okay with being different, and I think you have to embrace that difference. I think that's a big thing, too, for anybody who's going to be different, and, like, embrace your individuality and your uniqueness, and even being plant-based or whatever. Like, everybody hasn't picked up on it, but honey, the wave is started. And, like, there will be people that will come along later and be like, man, I should have done this earlier. And it's like, I tried to tell you. But it's okay. I think that every person that evolutionized the world, like, sorry, I used the wrong term. Everyone that revolutionized the world started it by doing something that was against the grain.
That was different, yeah.
You know, and absolutely. I think that's the thing, and I think that's why I'm so excited, so passionate about the plant-based lifestyle, because I know in my innermost being that it's going to change so many lives. One, because I've already seen it. Several times over. I've already seen it. I've seen it with my best friend here, and I've seen it with other people that have listened to what, you know, I've advised them to do, and it making an immediate impact. And I'm a facts and data person, you know. So for me, it's like, I can still do something and not necessarily have the immediate results and still go with it. It's more frustrating and discouraging. I think you have to have a true, like, grit about yourself to keep going in the face of adversity. And I think that's what, like, I appreciate about you the most, because you're, like, in some very trying circumstances, yet you refuse to just give in. And I think that's important for anyone that deals with anything that they have diagnosed as chronic, or, you know, this is going to be like a long-term thing that, you know, you've been diagnosed with, or they've even given up on you.
Yeah.
Because I'm a hope dealer, okay? If it's like at the end, if it's 4th and inches and it's 30 seconds left, we got 30 seconds. What we gonna do? We're gonna go for it. You know, we're going for the touchdown.
So one thing I want to encourage is that if you have any kind of chronic illness, any kind of illness or disease or anything that's been diagnosed, you know, for you or on you, any diagnosis that you've been given, take a look at your diet and do a little research and try to find what's best for the condition that they've assigned to you.
Right.
And don't count out diet, because it doesn't seem like it affects you, but it really does. And another thing I wanted to add, as far as like my hospital visits and things, and being an advocate, I used to believe that you had to do what they said or what they recommended. Your health care is totally up to you. If the doctor recommends something that you don't agree with, you can refuse the care. And that's something that I just discovered. Like, some of the things that they were trying to give me, I had to refuse because they were just doing it just to do it. Some of the doctors who were assigned to my case didn't even know what sickle cell anemia was. They were sending specialists, orthopedics in there, and people who had never heard of sickle cell, who did not have any kind of knowledge of what it was or how to treat it, and they were just throwing things at it. And when they start throwing things at your condition, you can say no, you can say stop, you can do your own research, and you can be your own advocate.
Yeah, it's very important, and you're very brave,
Thank
you. To stand up for yourself. And I really didn't understand that aspect of it at all, to be honest. I was just like, obviously you are more knowledgeable than me, and I'm not saying that we should not appreciate doctors, and I'm not saying that we should just overhaul the system and just don't go to, no. If you have a condition, go to the hospital, get treatment, seek out doctors, but along with that, supplement it with educating yourself.
Correct.
And becoming informed about what it is that you have, what could potentially be causing it, what you can do differently, and be open-minded. Because that was the other thing, because I think initially you were given a Mediterranean diet for suggestion, and it was like, what was your response? Like, what am I supposed to eat?
What am I supposed to eat the other day? They recommended you can have fish twice a week. And my question was, for the rest of the week, what was I going to eat? Because I only knew meat at every meal. So they recommended a Mediterranean diet. They said, oh yeah, you should do the Mediterranean diet. This will help you lose weight. You eat fish twice a week. And that was all the meat that they suggested. So my question was,
well,
and so the other 5 days? Like, what do I do with that diet?
What am I going to do with it?
I don't know. I didn't know what to do with it. Like, I had no idea what to do with that diet.
I'm sorry, doctor, what?
Right. It's like, well, what does that meal plan look like? What does that meal plan look like? Yeah.
It's really funny now. Like,
and the thing is, though, that doctors don't spend a lot of time on nutrition.
Yeah.
Now, this is not to downplay the power of medicine and medicinal healing or anything like that. Times have changed, and modern medicine has gotten to new levels. We're not going to dive into that because that's a whole nother podcast.
Yeah.
Tune in. But the thing is, they do not spend a lot of time on nutrition. Now, this is a fact. They don't have a whole lot of courses in nutrition. I think they may spend 2 days on nutrition, so they don't really study on how your food affects your body. So they can say, do diet and exercise. That's their quote, diet and exercise, but they don't tell you how. So a nutritionist is a good idea.
Yeah.
And then just research it, like doing your own research, really seriously. And then just look into the benefits of a plant-based diet.
Or very soon you'll have some resources here available for you to be able to sign.
Planet Insight. Subliminal message. But no. Yeah, so just kind of look into plant-based diet, because I'm telling you my story, she's telling you her story, and we're just 2 cases of many, 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 many. There are people who have been healed from so many things.
Yep.
And so many conditions that have been turned around that you wouldn't even begin to think it has anything to do with what you're eating.
Right.
Because we're not taught that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And when you start just thinking logically, right? Once again, I'm in like how things work that makes sense to me. In regards to milk, like I started to just reject it at probably like preteen age, I was like, I really just don't like how this tastes. You know, I was more of a juice girl, orange juice, apple juice for breakfast, like, you know, with my pancakes and everything. But now that we've gone this far and on this side of it, it's like, okay, you have breast milk for babies, and cows basically give breast milk to their calves. There is no need for you to drink that. Like, there's no need for a grown person to drink breast milk.
Exactly.
You know? So there's no need for you to drink cow's milk.
Because what's the purpose of cow's milk?
It's to grow the baby cow.
As fast as possible. Look how big they're supposed to be.
Right.
Like,
and then, like, if you think about it, like, logically again, you know, you have this massive cow. It's not eating another animal to get that big, but it's getting all the nutrition that it needs from the ground, from the earth. And, like, we are designed to do the same things. And I think, like, it's so commonplace for us, the way that we have shifted as a culture, because even like 50 years ago, you know, like my mom's generation, like they were eating food at home all the time. People were cooking. It was a part of our culture to actually have food at home. Only like recently, when I say recent, you know, 30, 40 years, has it kind of spun to this fast food, highly processed, you know, environment where we've had these stores blow up, like the Walmarts, the, you know, the little just different shops, different restaurants pop up now to have all this stuff accessible to you. And when you have these products on shelves and stuff, they have to have a shelf life. So, of course, you have to add preservatives, like, but things weren't happening like that before. You know, and even like when my grandmother was still alive, she talked to us about grocery shopping and saying how fruit was supposed to happen in season, and the way that things like looked had drastically changed. She grew up on a farm. She knew how things were supposed to work, and agriculture was a part of our culture. And now it's like a rare thing. You know, everything's being mass produced. And so, like, of course, that's impacted our bodies as well. And we were a lot more active as a society. There were a lot more factory jobs. There were a lot more jobs that required people to move around a lot. Now we're sedentary. You know, and so that affects you. So you have two things working against you. You're not moving around as much, and then you're eating things that don't go well with your body.
Right.
You know, and that unfortunately leads to some illnesses that can be reversed by diet. You know, high blood pressure and high cholesterol and type 2 diabetes don't have to be the end for you.
Yeah, they don't come with old age. It's just not an automatic sense.
Yes, and you can change it. And that's powerful. And I think that's what we haven't recognized. Like, and that's advocacy, that's awareness, like not just supporting these foundations that do the research, but actually making this a part of your life. And being unyielding and unwilling to accept, like, this is just my fate.
Right. Yeah.
You can change the direction of your life. You can change the quality of your life by being more intentional and disciplined about what you put in your body.
This is true. This is all true. And we thank you guys for tuning in to this episode
of Planet Insight. And always remember, wisdom is knowledge applied and pursuing insight.